Good afternoon to everyone. Welcome to our webinar on the European Solidarity Corps, volunteering opportunities abroad through others, and followed by a ceremony on the e-accessibility scholarship. But first of all, let's see a little bit the rules of the house. My name is Loredana, and I am starting moderating this webinar. Hopefully, when we solve the technical issues, our moderator will be here as promised in our promo. So let's see a little bit. We provide sign language interpretation. This one, you can see it on the screen. We are providing captioning, which is to be found in the chat box. It's a link that you have to click on it, and you will have on a web page the text going on live while we are speaking, so you can follow that. Should you have questions, comments, please don't hesitate to send them. For everything that is technical, you don't hear us, you have a problem you don't manage to open, don't hesitate to drop them in our chat box, and in the question box you can put all questions linked to the content of the webinars. If you have questions for one of our speakers, we would prefer if you can also include the name of the speaker. We hope that you will enjoy this webinar. This is recorded and it will be made available afterwards in a video, and you can watch it at any time and share it. So now that this has been said, let's go to our speakers and not lose too much time. By the end of the session, you will have the possibility to have some of your questions answered, and hopefully the content provided will already bring some of the answers. Volunteering is made by many people, and this is a wonderful opportunity. We have a program on the European level, which is called the European Solidarity Corps. One of its main activity is volunteering, but it is much more than that. And young people with disabilities can do it. Our first speaker today is Andrei Popescu, Program Manager of the European Solidarity Corps at the European Commission. He's coming from Directorate General of the Youth and Education, Youth and Culture. And Andrei is going to provide us what this program really offers to young people, to all young people. And Andrei would be really interested to know what is going to look like the new program and what is it available for young persons with disabilities. Andrei, the floor is yours. Thank you so much for accepting to be with us, and we are listening to you.
Hello, everyone. I hope you can hear me, and I thank you, Loredana, for a wonderful introduction. Like you said, Loredana, I'm delighted to. I'm here to present. Sorry, I'm not sure you can see my screen, so I'm just going to.
We can see your screen, Andrei, and we can hear you and see you perfectly. Thank you.
Okay. All right, great. So, so thank you for the invitation to talk about one of the key European initiatives that aim to offer opportunities to young people across Europe and beyond. And I'm here to talk to you more specifically about the European Solidarity Corps, which is One second, I'm having some troubles here with the panel, but okay. So the European Solidarity Corps, which basically is a relatively new initiative of the European Union, targeting young people between 18 and 30 years old, and offers them opportunities to volunteer or to train or to work in one of the European Union countries, or even beyond. The reason and the objective of the program is basically dual, and there are two main objectives. One is to respond to societal challenges and to help respond to key challenges that the European Union is facing, in terms of, for example, environmental protection, or tackling refugee crisis, or things that the challenges that pertain to education or youth work, and many other topics, but also at the same time to provide young people with opportunities to learn and develop themselves. The budget for the program is 375 million euro for 2018 to 2020, and going forward in the next programming period, the program will also continue beyond 2020 for another 7 years, 2021, 2027, for which we have allocated, we have proposed a budget of approximately 1 billion euros. In short, the activities that we support are three types. Volunteering is the main one. But also we have an occupational strand called traineeships and jobs, and one grassroots type of initiatives called the Solidarity Projects. I will quickly try to describe each one of them in the next slides. Volunteering, we have two main types of volunteering opportunities offered to young people. The first one is individual volunteering, which allows young people participate in the daily work of organizations for between 2 to 12 months. But for young people with fewer opportunities, the activity can start as of 2 weeks, so two weeks minimum. And this can happen abroad or in the country of the resident of the participant. Volunteering teams are a different format. It basically are groups of 10 to 40 young people from coming from different countries, and offering their support to volunteer for shorter periods of time, between 2 weeks and 2 months. While they are doing this, young people receive a set of benefits, such as free accommodation, food, pocket money, small sums to help them get about the venue where they are, and also we cover the travel costs for participants to and from the venue of the activity. The second main action that we support is the traineeships and jobs. Although we have a limited number of traineeships and jobs available at the moment, they're still one of the key opportunities that we have on offer. Traineeships are periods of work practice that last between 2 to 6 months, can be renewed once, and they can also take place abroad or in the country of the participant, in the participant's country. And jobs also are opportunities that last between 3 to 12 months, also abroad or in the country of residence of the participant. And very importantly, these both traineeships and jobs are remunerated by the organization that trains or employs the participant. In addition, we also offer the travel costs as well for the participants and to and from the venue of the activity. And if the participant travels abroad, they receive a small allowance to help them settle in. We call it a relocation allowance. The third type of opportunity we offer is the Solidarity Project, and these are initiated, developed, and implemented by young people themselves. So by at least 5 people who get together and they want to make a positive change in their local community. They can do this by applying and by running a project of their own for a period of between 2 to 12 months. All 5 participants need to be registered, and one of them takes the lead role and the legal representative of the project. A few words about the geographical coverage of the program. It is quite wide. We don't cover just the EU member states, but the wider neighborhood of the European Union, such as EFTA countries like Liechtenstein, Iceland, Norway, the Balkans, Albania, Bosnia-Herzegovina, Kosovo, Montenegro, Serbia, North Macedonia, Turkey as well, Armenia, Azerbaijan, Belarus, Georgia, Moldova, Ukraine, north of Africa as well, Algeria, Egypt, Middle Eastern part as Israel, Jordan, Lebanon, Libya, Morocco, Palestine, Syria, Tunisia, and the Russian Federation. This is for volunteering. For jobs and traineeships, the coverage is a bit more restricted, only to member states, while for solidarity projects, these are open to EU member states, Turkey, North Macedonia, and Iceland. So participants who are resident in any of these countries can apply. Together with the main benefits that we offer through the activity itself, the volunteering or the traineeship or the job, it's very important to mention the quality and support measures that we offer for participants and for the organizations involved in the program. And I'm going to describe as quickly as I can these quality and support measures. The general online training is a set of modules, online training modules that we offer to participants through the European Solidarity Corps portal. And these can be general induction in explaining what the program is, or anything that can help them with understanding the mission of the European Solidarity Corps, things to do with ethics, how to behave when they go on an activity, integrity, the roles and responsibility of participants of the organizations, thematic training, health and safety, and so on. We also offer linguistic support, and this can be either a grant or access to an online linguistic support platform. Training and evaluation cycle is one of the key tools that we offer to participants in order to take advantage of the informal learning that they acquire throughout the activity by participating in volunteering activities or traineeships and jobs. And we call it a cycle because young participants are trained before by the organizations before they depart the country where they live to go abroad for an activity, or when they arrive, and also during the activity, together with mentors, with representatives from national authorities and so on. So it's a very comprehensive set of meetings where the participants are supported. The same purpose has the mentoring aspect. Mentoring is more continuous, offered. It's a continuous process offered during the activity through the help of a mentor appointed by the organization that hosts the participant. Recognition of learning outcomes is also important because the competences that the participant acquires during the activity have to be identified and documented, and the participant, the objective is for the participant to acknowledge what he has or she has learned throughout the activity. We also care about the general well-being of the participant, and we offer a very comprehensive insurance policy so that they are covered by for unforeseen circumstances, as well as certificate of participation when the activity is completed. So how does it work in practice? Basically, what you need to do is to register in the European Solidarity Corps database. This is the first step. And then the project, if selected, then you can start a project in an organization. I'll explain here. We have a chart. I'll try to explain it as quickly as possible. At the heart of it is the European Solidarity Corps database, the portal, where both organizations and young people meet. The young people registers, and the approved organization also have access to this database. And then the organization searches for suitable candidates, or the young people, the registrants, apply for advertised opportunities. Then candidates are contacted, they're interviewed. If successful, then the organization offers a placement. The participant carries out the activity, and the organization offers the certificate upon completion. This is a very short description of what is going on and how you can participate in the program. The second part of my presentation today is about the inclusive dimension of the program. The principles and equality and inclusiveness are, of course, core values of the EU, and they are enshrined in the treaties. And that is why inclusion is a key feature of our program as well. And I'm just going to read through the exact objective that we have in terms of inclusiveness. We aim to ensure that particular efforts are made to promote social inclusion and equal opportunities, in particular for the participation of young people with fewer opportunities, through a range of special measures such as appropriate formats of solidarity activities and personalized support. What this says basically is that we aim to try to make it work for everyone, and we have a lot of emphasis on young people with fewer opportunities, and we do this in dual approach to achieve this objective by offering dedicated type of activities and also offering personalized support to people who need it. And this is one of the reasons why so far the core is one of the more successful programs in terms of inclusiveness. I have some figures here. 44% of funded activities involve young people with fewer opportunities, and 32% of projects address inclusion as a theme and or a topic. I mentioned the activity formats that we use to promote inclusion. For example, we have in-country activities. Like I mentioned, these are valid for volunteering, traineeships and jobs, and solidarity projects. So this is for those who cannot or prefer not to travel abroad, but also for to introduce newcomers without prior experience abroad. Then we have short-term volunteering, up a minimum of 2 weeks. So those who cannot engage in long-term duration activities, because our activities typically are up to 1 year. Those who prefer to go for 2 weeks or a bit more, it's also possible if they fall under the young person with Future Opportunity umbrella. And then we have group volunteering, like I said earlier as well, volunteering teams, as these are for whom group activities are a more suitable option, and they prefer not to volunteer on an individual basis. In addition to these formats, we have a series of additional support that we offer. For example, the advanced planning visits, which are basically like preparatory activities that allow organizations that work with young people in opportunities to make special arrangements for them, and also allows those young people to go and see by themselves how the activity will take place in advance of So we also have the option to have as a young person with the opportunity an accompanying person. This is probably very relevant for you, because this is for young people with special needs. So this accompanying person can help provide any type of help that disabled young people require, and we fund that those costs as well. We have reinforced mentorship, which is intensified type of mentorship for those young persons who don't require extra support in terms of mentorship, and the usual mentorship is not sufficient. And regarding funding, we have 2 types of support, financial support. The first one is aimed at covering costs of specific needs of participants experiencing fewer opportunities, so that they can participate on the same equal footing as other participants. And secondly, we have funding for organizations who run inclusion and diversity projects, and because they have specific needs to reach out to hard to reach groups, and they incur extra cost in order to cover additional workload, and they have dedicated staff, and then we have additional funding to support these organizations as well. Few words about the next program just before I conclude. There is even more now a reinforced focus on inclusion, and we have a clear political mandate from EU leaders from the top to make the future programs even more inclusive. So we will continue to do what we have been doing so far. For example, to invest in inclusive formats and options, such as short-term in-country activities and solidarity projects, like I mentioned. But we will also even go further and improve the inclusiveness dimension. For example, by prioritizing inclusion and diversity in the project assessment process. So we will aim to include in the selection criteria projects and prioritize those that deal with young people with fewer opportunities. Improving accessibility as well, making the program guidance, application, reporting mechanism, the documents and the forms a bit more clear and more understandable. In terms of simplification, this is also very important, because there will be less administrative burden for small organizations. This is quite important, just like the wider use of a more simplified way of funding, and better IT tools. And lastly, but equally important, we will have more focus on improving awareness raising and outreach through targeting and more tailored communications, and building on the experience of key partners at that national level, in particular national agencies and resource centers. So this is it from me. I will now conclude by giving you a concrete and inspiring, I hope, example of a solidarity project from Lithuania. And if my colleagues can still hear me, I hope they will play it. Thank you.
Yes, I will do it. Just 1 second. I'm trying to.
Labas, mano vardas Kotryna.
Paulius.
Roberta. Antra. Mes kasdien susitinkame jaunuolių dienos centre. Mes jauni, mes norime turėti draugų iš išorės.
Man kilo idėja.
Parašėme ir pateikėme projektą Solidarumo kava. 3 kartus per savaitę mes verdame solidarumu ir draugystę kvepiančią kavą.
Šią kavą dalinamės su žmonėmis gatvėse, parkuose ir autobusų stotelėse.
Mes geriame kavą drauge ir šnekamės apie meilę, negalią, draugystę ir solidarumą.
Solidarumo korpuso dėka įvyko svarbus pokytis bendruomenėje. Dabar solidarumas stipresnis už stigmą.
Solidarumo kavos mes turim labai daug draugų.
Solidarumas jėga! Ir aš galiu, tu gali prisijungti solidarumą ir dalyvauti.
Okay, so thank you, Andrei, for the very interesting presentation and for explaining the project and the problem of European Solidarity Corps, as well as how can it be inclusive for everyone, and a nice video in the end. By the way, for those who don't know me, I want to apologize, I just come now, but I had some technical issues. My name is Kamil Goungor. I am the chair of the EDF Youth Committee. Yeah, we cannot foresee them from the beginning. So thank you, Loredana, for doing the beginning and doing a great job. Now I don't want to take much time. If you have, guys, any questions or comments, you are free to comment on the question box and or even in the chat. But now, without further ado, I will go to next speaker, so we don't lose much time. It's Anca David from Views International, which is among other hosting and sending people, young people within the European Solidarity Corps. He will ask how the project works, and then yeah, we'll continue with the next speaker. So Anca, well, the floor is yours.
Hello, thank you very much, Kamil, for the introduction. My name is Anca. I work for Youth International. Our executive office is situated in Liège, in Belgium. And today I will try to introduce you a bit to our way of adapting volunteering projects for visually impaired young persons. So Youth International, it is a European youth NGO dedicated to young people from 18 till 35 years old. Our project aim mainly to empower visually impaired volunteers to be as autonomous and independent as they can. And one of our core activities in this sense, I'm trying to move a bit my slides, but I see that I have a bit of, no, I think it's good. Yes. So one of our core activities are the adapted volunteering projects for visually impaired persons. Here you can see some images that we have taken over the years with the volunteers that we have hosted. What does it mean for us volunteering and adapted projects for young visually impaired persons? It means that we have taken the general framework of the volunteering project and we have adapted it as good as we could to the needs of our beneficiaries. So the main aspects of volunteering projects are, of course, organizing an adapted, an advanced planning visit of 2 days. This is how the volunteers can see for the first time the work environment, their apartment, meet with our team of instructors. And another aspect could be also described as in the beginning of their project, they have like 2 weeks of preparation time. It means that they do not start their activities as volunteers, but mainly they get mobility and daily living skills classes. As our projects are taking place in the French-speaking part of Belgium, they also get adapted French classes. Also, one of the adaptations that we have made, it is also related to the working hours, because if for a general framework project of volunteering, volunteers work like 38 hours per week. In our case, we speak of 20 to 24 hours per week. During the lifespan of the project, they are supported by a mentor, and then we speak about reinforced mentorship because our mentors, they support the volunteers also for their work environment, for example. What we also try to organize, for example, are adapted cultural visits. Our project nowadays, they last 9 months. So during the 9 months of project, we organize around 3 adapted visits with them. And of course, security is something that is safe, and security is something very important for us. That's why we can also offer different materials in Braille or large print, and also adapted first aid classes. We have started our adapted volunteering projects in 2007. Of course, before that we had also like a pilot phase in 2005 and 2006. So since 2007 until now, we have hosted in Liège, in our adapted projects, 45 young visually impaired volunteers, and we have sent a total of 7 young visually impaired abroad. Since the beginning of this project, we can say that there were more benefits and advantages than downsides. So I will try to quickly tell you what are our the conclusions about this. So for us, we consider that adapted volunteering gives to the young people a lot of information about citizenship. They also understand better the European programs and policies, for example. And one of really the best and main benefits, it is related to personal autonomy, the self-worth, the self-confidence, a lot of social skills, language skills, of course. And what is happening is that practically this kind of project, it is one of the first time that young visually impaired that try to do this project. They do a concrete and real experience in the community service. So of course that afterwards, when they get back to their homeland, it is a lot easier for them to find a job. And in terms of collaboration between various institutions, of course, this kind of project puts in contact like local organizations that we have here with international organizations in an international context. So we can speak truly of solidarity and cooperation with our projects. Of course, there are some challenges that we have observed in our projects over the last years. And I would say that the main challenges are related to the administrative issues. And here we speak mainly about visa issues. As you know, sometimes when we host young people coming from countries outside the European Union, we are facing some problems with delivering visas for them, and we had some problems, for example, in starting on time the programs. Then one of the main challenge until now, it is related to low accessibility of various platforms that young people have to use before the project starts or during the duration of the project. And here I speak mainly about the registration procedure on the portal, for example, the use of online linguistic support platform or Signa for the insurance issues. Although we have access to special needs costs, sometimes those costs are not granted. And here I speak mainly about the example with the adapted visits, the adapted cultural visits for young volunteers. And I think that one of the last and also very important challenge, it is the fact that until now, European Solidarity Corps and also we can speak about Erasmus also are not enough known by young people. So people do not know that these opportunities exist. So yes, a question of visibility, I would say. Before I finish, I would like to thank you for listening. And of course, here you have also a lot of information about our project. If you go on our website, you can contact us via email and all the social media that are published on the last page of our slide. Thank you.
Thank you, Anca. It was very interesting, and it was also interesting to see the challenges, because yeah, we need to improve in order to make it as inclusive as possible. Without further ado, I will pass the floor to the next speaker, again representing a caustic organization, this time Frank Seun, the advocacy and policy coordinator of ENIL, the European Network for Independent Living, and he will tell us how ENIL is doing it with volunteers. Frank, you have the floor.
Okay, thank you, Kamil. Can you see my screen and well, I think also me in this case?
Yes.
Okay. Great. That's good. So thanks for the good introduction. And indeed, I will explain a bit, like also Anca before, about the project that we do at ENIL about the European Solidarity Corps. So we also do inclusive European Solidarity Corps projects, and I will first start by talking a bit more about ENIL and ESE, then a bit on the role of the national agency as like an important partner to make the project work, and then I will focus more on like the specific assistance that we also provide, which is personal assistance, and a bit on the lessons that we have from the COVID crisis now. So let me start first by explaining a bit more the ESE projects at ENIL. And here you see a slide with pictures of the faces of each of our ESE volunteers throughout the years. So you see that we have quite a few thus far from many different countries, including our moderator Kamil, who was also an EVS volunteer for us at the time. I think in 2015 that was. So that is when we started the ESE volunteering program. We are, maybe I should have started with to say what ENIL is. ENIL is the European Network on Independent Living, so an NGO for disability rights and independent living in Brussels. And like also Views, we are hosting the volunteers since 2015 every year. And we have volunteers from many different countries and also with many different access needs. You know, so this gives us a good view of how we can make also the project more inclusive, and what is good about the project and what can be improved, what we will focus on a bit more now. So with that said, now we come to the first kind of important element of making the inclusive European Solidarity Corps, or the accessible and inclusive European Solidarity Corps, happen in practice. This is the national agency. As was explained already before, the ESE foresees several ways to support organizations and also volunteers to come to Brussels, or to join the European Solidarity Corps and to fully enjoy their experience, whatever are the access needs. And there are two kind of support streams that you can access to have also the budget to put the support needs in place, which is inclusion support, which is the flat rate for the organization, and also exceptional cost, which we use to put in place other access needs like accessible accommodation, personal assistance, and other things. The difference is that inclusion support is a flat rate, and exceptional cost, you need to justify all the costs that you make. For instance, if you need accessible accommodation, you need to have offers from different accommodation providers, and then you need to justify that you chose the cheapest and that you really made an effort to kind of find the best value for money, so to say. And the same goes with other access needs that you want to put in place, like for instance screen reading software or accessible transport or things like that. And here, as you can imagine, the cost is sometimes quite high to find, for instance, accessible accommodation in Brussels. So there, the national agency really needs to kind of think together with you also how to make it possible in practice. And we work with the national agency YINS, who has been quite supporting in like making sure that our projects could go ahead, but that sometimes also needed to say to us like, yes, maybe if you want personal assistance 24/7, it is not possible to hire 3 people. You should try to see if you can find a personal assistant who can offer 24/7 assistance with only a full-time contract also in the weekend. So then you see that while the national agency wants to provide the support you need to make the project happen, also they operate in kind of limited cost structure. So there you see that it is important to have a supportive national agency, but still that the budget is still limited, and sometimes it therefore makes your project more difficult. To focus on some of the concrete things that can be problematic or that are needed to make the project accessible and inclusive, I will focus on a few points here, but I will also try to be short and to also not repeat things that Anca already said, so I will be a bit faster here. But for instance, as Anca said, well, I will add maybe a bit to this. The visa is a problematic issue because it sometimes takes an awful lot of time for the visa procedure to be completed. So then you still have volunteers that already were already 2 or 3 months into their project and still cannot come to Belgium because their visa is not approved. And I think that this is a very we had it twice now with volunteers that actually only could join halfway through the project due to visa issues. So I think that there is a role for the European Union to make sure that it is more streamlined and faster. So yes, there I think regardless of the access needs a person has, a visa procedure should be quicker. When it comes to accessible accommodation, this can be both wheelchair accessible accommodation or other types of accessible accommodation, for instance, which is close to the office. As you can imagine, it is hard to find in Brussels and therefore really expensive. So as I said, this sometimes takes up a lot of budgets that we apply for in the special needs support, which then means that we need to save on other costs that are also useful, or use the inclusion supports that is actually the flat rate for the organization to cover additional support needs. Like for instance, in one of our projects we had well, the person that joined was kind of confident that he would be able to take the public transport in Brussels, but when arriving in Brussels, it became clear that it was not so easy to take the public transport, and therefore we needed to make sure that we had taxis provided to ensure the transport between the annual office and the accommodation. But of course, this wasn't budgeted in advance because we didn't know it in advance, and the person also didn't know it in advance. So therefore, we needed to use some of the extra budget for Enel to cover for this, because it is not possible to ask for more budget once the project is approved. So this is again the point on accessible transport also, that because the transport in Brussels is not accessible for many of our volunteers, this was a problem. And then you can have, I put here physiotherapy on the slide, but you can think of many other like social security, healthcare related issues that are important for the volunteers to fully enjoy their ESE, but are not always covered by the insurance. For instance, physiotherapy. This is this is a thing that is linked to Social Security. So if a person needs physiotherapy, we need to kind of find a doctor who wants to prescribe physiotherapy to a person who is not registered in the Belgian Social Security system. Sometimes it works, but sometimes you need to look for a long time to find a doctor who wants to do this. The same for access to other kinds of treatment, of kind of medical Social Security related treatment. So there we also see that this can be an obstacle, which we think can be overcome by maybe more European cooperation in the social security fields to make access to things like physiotherapy portable across member states. But this is of course a discussion a bit away from the ESE, but I think that many of the obstacles we face also with personal assistance can be overcome by making freedom of movement of social rights also a possibility. This brings me to my second to last slide, which I think is good because I don't have much time left. But this is personal assistance, which is the key to mobility in most of our ESE projects. So maybe I've mentioned it already a few times, but maybe I should explain what is personal assistance. And personal assistance basically is that the person, so the disabled person that comes to do an ESE or even outside ESE, has a budget to hire an assistant to assist a person in daily life. And this can be a person that comes with the volunteer from the country of origin, but this can also be a person that we hire in Brussels, depending on if the volunteer finds a person that is willing to make the same time commitment and come along on the ESE project. However, there is one difference, because as I said, the personal assistance as it should be is that the disabled person gets a budget to hire an assistance, but this is of course not possible in ESE. So what we do is ENIL as an organization, we hire the assistants on a pre-calculated budget, also agreed with Jens. These are of course also high costs because you basically hire an additional employee. But again, here it's a pre-calculated budget. So this also means that there is not much room for maneuvering if this PA gets ill, or for instance, if the volunteer and the PA they don't get along, or there is it just doesn't click on a personal level, or even if the PA feels that the work is a bit too heavy and would like some more hours, or maybe another PA to do shifts with. This is not possible, because we then cannot apply for more budget in the beginning. During the project and before the project, it is impossible to apply for more budget, because you cannot justify the extra cost of a spare PA for more flexibility. Also, because we need to keep the costs down, we offer the minimum wage, which of course makes it more attractive for PAs to change jobs if they get a better job offer. So which again has this same problem. And then again, the portability of rights could here be also a solution, so that disabled people, when they travel to Brussels, can access the Belgian PA system. Then this is my last slide. This is the lessons from COVID. I think here we definitely see that there was a need for additional, or to allow additional budget, to allow flexibility. For instance, during the lockdown, one of our volunteers, the PA had to basically stay in the same apartment with the volunteer 24/7 every day, because it was not allowed to leave the house to go to the apartment. Like the PA could not make the journey because it was not allowed due to COVID rules. because the PA is an employee, so not connected to the social security. So for the Belgian government rules, the PA was just supposed to stay at home because she was working for Renial, not as a personal assistant. And so here again, this need for flexibility is illustrated. Another lesson that we had from the COVID is that teleworking, it works, and it can be a solution if there is no other solution or possibility to come to Brussels for the volunteering or to work from home. However, it is not the same as volunteering and to have the experience of coming to Brussels and to gain experience in another country. So this is why mobility, in our view, should be a choice. So indeed, sometimes people might choose for shorter ESEs or might choose for a digital component, but digital can never be the same as inclusive. So therefore, I think one of the things we should really keep in mind is that while digital ESE can be a component, it should never be used as an excuse to cut the cost for supporting disabled people with all the support needs they have to join an ESE mobility, because even more, I think, investment is needed to, as was said, allow this flexibility in support needs as well. So yes, this is my presentation. If you have any questions, you can put them in the question box, as I think it is called. Or you can email me at the email address here, and also check the email website for updates on the ESE. Yeah, and thank you for listening.
Thanks a lot, Frank. One more interesting presentation, and we had the challenges, and especially the COVID ones in the end, which was something very today, an issue of today. Now I don't want to take much time because we are a little bit running late. Just to let you know that if you have questions, please do it in a written form, either in the questions box or in the chat box. And yeah, without further ado, I am passing the floor to two volunteers. In the beginning, we had commission, then we had two organizations, and now we will have two volunteers, the real protagonists of the European mobility. So in the beginning, we have Diana Zoldos, hopefully I prefer it okay, who is a former participant. And then after Diana, we have Veronica Tollner, again, former participant. So ladies, please tell us about your experiences.
Thank you, Kamil, and thanks for inviting me. I'm originally from Hungary, and I had an ESC volunteering experience in Vienna, Austria, for 6 months between 2017 and 2018. And my host organization was Interreg Central Europe, while the coordinating organization was the Association of European Border Regions, which is in Berlin. And just as a person from the Commission mentioned already, I had all these trainings and everything to prepare to my volunteering experience. But I had some concern because I'm living with cerebral palsy, and I'm kind of privileged because I don't need any special equipment or requirements. So I'm always thinking about whether I should mention my disability, because there is a fear of refusing, that people will just Google my illness, and it can be very various from person to person how the disability looks like. And since then, I was applying for volunteering in the communication sector and doing events and social media and all this stuff when you have to be very quick, sometimes run after the people when you have a huge event organized. So I was not sure how about mentioning it. And in the end, I didn't. And I didn't have any difficulties due to my disabilities. And back then in 2017, I think there was not there were no space in the application form which is directly ask the people about special needs or disabilities. I'm not sure how is it now. Also, my personal recommendation that it would be good if there will be a specialist available for the organization who are thinking about having a person with any kind of disability, so they could discuss and ask their questions, their concerns, and have some support. So as I mentioned, I was doing communication, and it was really important me professionally because I've been working before my volunteering experience, and I've been working after the volunteering experience as well. So for me, it was an opportunity for professional growth as well. And of course, I had a lot of fun, and I did many trips around Europe, and I bring some pictures to you about those experiences. For instance, here is a get-together with other IV volunteers. The IV volunteers are Interreg Youth Volunteers, which is an initiative within the European Solidarity Corps project. So they are all work for different Interreg organizations. And Interregs are in general responsible for taking care of European funded projects and territorial cooperation between EU countries. So we were all working in this initiative, and we were actually the very first one. And these pictures were taken during my work. So for instance, there is one which is made in Budapest at an event. This was very special because Budapest and Hungary is my home country. So it was very special to go home. And we have, for instance, an open day in the office so people can come in. And we had a very big event in Berlin with almost 400 participants. So that was the hugest event in my life so far. And of course, as I mentioned, there were a lot of fun, like the Viennese Christmas market. It's very famous, and you can see the Christmas tree built up from stretches. And my favorite place, which was the Belvedere Museum in Vienna. And I traveled a lot around Europe because I had a lot of flexibility as a volunteer. So it's not like a full-time job. I had a lot of holidays and personal and professional travels around Europe. Here are the pictures from Italy and from Spain. And what this experience gave me, it's I'm more open, I'm more confident. For instance, I'm originally from a very small town. We don't have underground or trams or not very much possibilities to use public transport, but I had a chance to travel with basically everything possible, like a lot of time with trams and planes and everything. And it gave me a lot of freedom. Like I believe now that I'm able to do these things. And of course, it gave me a huge community and friends for my whole life from almost all European countries. Here you can see that I'm still engaged, and I'm usually participating in different campaigns about volunteering or about the European cooperation or for the European Solidarity Corps. And there were pictures from us displayed with a little quote from us. And it was displayed in a European Parliament building in Brussels. And I would like to say thank you for your attention, and I will give the words to Veronica, who is also my friend, and I know her from the European Solidarity Corps group. So as I mentioned, I really have friends from the community there. Veronica? I cannot hear you.
Can you unmute yourself, Veronica, please? This is from the technical
assistant.
I think you are unmuted. Maybe just disconnect your, are you using a headphone or something?
Connected to audio.
We can see you, but we cannot hear you. And it shows that your microphone is on, but your sound doesn't get through. If you're using a microphone like a headset, you can disconnect from the laptop and connect it again. Can you type in the questions, because we cannot hear you? Sorry.
Let's give a minute to Veronica to try to solve
And
the
what
issue.
if she reconnects?
Okay, can you hear me? Okay, so if Veronica is trying to reconnect, hopefully, because at the moment we cannot hear you. I don't know, maybe you can do a quick restart or reopen the program again. I want to take the opportunity to ask everyone that soon is the time for questions. So yeah, please write your questions in the questions area or in the chat box. And yeah, we will give maybe a minute more to Veronica.
Veronica, can you leave the webinar and then come back again using the link? Maybe it will work.
I'm sorry, I suggest maybe by the time Veronica tries to connect, if we have any questions until now, Kamil, maybe we can take 1 or 2 questions.
Yes, we can do that. So let me open the question box. I see 3, I think. One is a comment, and it's saying Adrian is saying it's very hard to find a job place for disability persons, which, yeah, that's true. And that's why the European Solidarity Corps, I think, is very important and is helping people. Because, for example, my personal experience is that I found a job because I did the volunteering myself. It was European Voluntary Service, the father of the European Solidarity Corps.
Hello, can you hear me?
Oh, we hear you
yes,
now.
now we can. Great.
Yeah. Oh, super. Okay.
So we leave the questions for later, and we go to Veronica.
My name is Veronica. It is okay.
Everything is good. Yes, go ahead.
My name is Veronica Turner. I am originally from Hungary. Currently doing my studies in Germany with Erasmus. I was a European Solidarity Corps volunteer for a year between September 2017 to September 2018. I am a hard of hearing student and I have a cochlear implant. My host organization was Montessori Vereinigung in Leipzig, Germany, and my sending organization was the 5 Fiatalok Vidéki Egyesület in Hungary. The acronym means Youth for Rural Development. And I would like to share some photos during my presentation. This one shows when I visited North Sea. Next slide, please. Okay. My background is in special education, and I had a chance to be volunteering at a bilingual German-Spanish nursery school and kindergarten. I served as a special needs assistant. The nursery school was truly all-inclusive. The children there were not only with special needs, but from a different social background, coming from migrant families. I was organizing Montessori activities for children between age 3 to 7. Projects such as Christmas and other events, and activities to improve intercultural skills and inclusiveness. And on the photo, you can see Hungarian traditional artworks on the table, and the kids are visible by they are drawing those pieces. Next slide, please. When I chose my voluntary project, one of the most important point was to gain a professional experience by serving a good cause. I have been hesitating whether I should have mentioned about my disability in the application or not. In the end, I revealed it because during a phone interview or call, it would have been difficult. But I talked about it in a positive way too, and tell them that I am good at lip reading. I was a bit afraid of communicating with the smaller children because their speaking and language skills are in a constant development process. And leaving my comfort zone was scary, because of other things that are not related to disability, but moving abroad. My profile was a great fit for the hosting organization. They had a good knowledge about the disability and inclusion field. And they even asked whether I have a cochlear implant. Most people have no idea, but that is. Next slide, please. It was a heartwarming experience that after a while the kids were asking me to read them stories. They didn't care about the fact that German isn't my mother language. They didn't care about my disability either. For them, I was just a normal person reading them their bedtime stories. We are all equal when it comes to bedtime storytelling. I realized there are many common traits in foreign people and people with disabilities. Both groups are relying more on non-verbal communication. They probably have and use a different vocabulary. They must take more attention to speaking tones or even eye contact or other type of communications. My advice is don't hide your disability. Be resilient, be smart, tell them what you are good at, highlight your abilities, and it will be just fine and a brilliant experience. And the image shows when I visit Saxon, Switzerland. That is a place in Germany. And next slide, there are photos, and I brought some photos, some more photos that shows my experience as a volunteer and trips with other volunteers around. And thank you for your attention.
So thank you, Diana. Thank you, Veronica. Both of the presentations were very interesting. It's always nice to hear about the experiences of volunteers abroad, at least for me, because I did it also. So it's nice to, yeah, to remember and to see that more people are doing it today. We have only 10 minutes left for this part of the webinar, so I will go to the questions. Yeah, the one I already mentioned, it was just a comment about the difficulty of finding job when you are a disabled person. And yeah, I was saying that it is true, but we have experiences for people who did mobility, disabled people that did mobility, that now are working. And today in this webinar, you have 3 of them. So this is a good example. And now I go to the next question. It is addressed to Andrei. So it says, hello all. I have a question for Mr. Andrei Popescu about founding volunteering opportunities in institutional settings. Why does the European Solidarity Corps still allow volunteering opportunities in institutions if it calls to support full inclusion in the community, and claims to support full inclusion in the community? Andrei, are you here? Would you like to take it?
Yeah, sure. Sorry, just to maybe I didn't hear the question correctly. Is it why we don't allow or we allow?
So it is why European Commission is still allowing volunteering opportunities in institutions.
So it's still allowing?
Yes. Why?
Okay. No, because there must be a misunderstanding, or we don't. I mean, we specifically don't allow opportunities in institutions. There will be a conflict of interest to some extent there. So that's why we specifically instructed our national agencies not to do this. So we don't have any volunteers, as far as I know, carrying out any activities in European institutions. If it's about other kind of institutions, I'm not sure what. I mean, we do support some. There are national authorities who are accredited and they have a quality label, and they can support volunteers. But I don't see why that would be a problem in offering traineeships and jobs in.
Just to clarify, it's not about European institutions. It's not about Parliament or Commission. It's about the institutions for disabled people, for children, for elderly, which we know that we have volunteers. Which we know that there are volunteers working in such places.
Okay. And why? So the question is why we don't allow volunteers to.
No, why we allow?
Why we allow volunteers, and the question, I'm trying to understand the question because I'm not very familiar with the setup, the institutional setup of.
The last part of the question says, I mean, I rephrase it a little bit to make sense. That Commission claims to support full inclusion in the community, and so it doesn't. So I guess that she means that it doesn't make sense to allow volunteering in institutions, since this is against the Commission standards. Does it make sense?
To some extent, yeah. But I'm not. I really can't grasp the extent of the problem. So we do promote inclusion, is true, but allowing volunteers with disabilities to do volunteering in these institutions, the only risk that I see there would be job substitution or things like that. That would, I mean, a volunteer would replace an established job, or it would undermine the job conditions of other people who work there, and that would be the only problem that I can see there. But I don't really understand why we would not allow these kind of institutions to do volunteering if they are qualified and they meet our standards and quality criteria. So as far as I know, we do support volunteering with any kind of organization, within any kind of organization that meets our criteria, and we actually encourage the organizations who work with the young people with few opportunities, and we prioritize them to some extent. So I'm not sure I answered the question, but that's the best I can do, I'm afraid.
Okay, thank you. I guess that I mean, I don't want to say my personal opinion because it's not question to me, but because I work in the field. I think that the logic here is that institutions are against the Convention for Disabled People, the UN Convention for the Rights of Disabled People, and are against the guidelines of Commission. So if the Commission allows the volunteering in such places, it is kind of supporting working of such places. I think this is the message of the question, if I got it correctly also.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, no, I mean, I understand now. Yeah, no, but this is something that I'm afraid I don't have the policy background to it. So my answer still stands. As long as that organization meets our quality criteria, then we have to support them. We cannot discriminate. So to a large extent, it's a policy area. So it's a policy question. So
okay. Yeah.
I cannot offer a full answer to that, I'm afraid.
Yeah, but thank you anyway for taking the questions. Indeed, it's not something easy to be answered now, and it's not the place to discuss such issues, I guess, because the topic we discussed today is the European Solidarity Corps and the mobility. But yeah, it's something good to think for the future, maybe in the work we do in our organizations, both in the Commission and EDF and IL and all the organizations involved today, how we can discuss in the future. Now I go to the other question. Let me see if it is addressed to someone specific. No, it's not addressed to someone. It's just a comment saying, hello to everyone. In a few minutes, I have to leave the meeting, but I just want to say that it is always useful for us to meet projects, organizations, and volunteers involved on inclusion and special needs issues. Thank you. So that was one more comment. If I'm not mistaken, there is no other comments. Maybe my colleagues can clarify if I missed something. I think no. No, I see it's only
there
3
are
questions.
others, we will answer them
Later,
afterwards,
yes.
for sure.
That's true. Yeah, there is no other question, but if you have, you can always email us, and we will make sure to answer them in the future. Now it's almost 3:30, and it's time to switch to another part. We are not finished yet. We are finished with the European Solidarity Corps, but now we have the EDF and Oracle e-accessibility scholarship award ceremony that will highlight the winning project of a young disabled researcher. It will be presented by Alejandro Moledo from EDF. So I give the floor to him, and I want to welcome you, and I want to thank you all from my side for attending this first part of the webinar, and hope you enjoy it. Alejandro, the floor is yours.